Hello and welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. I'm so excited because Maureen Callahan is here. She is a columnist from the Daily Mail, and so am I, and I can't believe it. Maureen, welcome back to Kennedy Saves the World.
Kennedy, thank you for having me.
I can't say what this drink is, but it was by request, so this is for you.
Cheers and to good health.
Amen. Yeah. Just a little clear.
Lovely tasting spring water. Very clear.
Is it to your liking?
Very cold. Yes, I'm a snob when it comes to water. Have you had a water sommelier experience yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, but I'd
I've
like
not
to.
either, but I'd like to as well.
So ever since I read your book, Ask Not, I've been obsessed with it.
Oh my God.
I've
thanks.
always been intrigued by the Kennedys, and every generation there's a new one where you're like, oh, they're kind of hot, and again, very intriguing. But there's one of them that I'm like, who is this nepo baby who appears to have been dropped on his head? And it's Jack Schlossberg.
Yes.
Am I saying it right?
I believe you're saying it right.
So he is
Jack,
Caroline Kennedy's son,
and JFK's grandson.
who has said sexual things about his grandmother that I think is really weird.
He said that Usha Vance is hotter than Jackie O.
Yeah, which is also weird because he's thinking of his grandmother in terms of hotness,
Right.
but also lusting over the current second lady,
But there's nothing really.
which is okay. Hey, man,
No.
blanket last
I'm
is like-
actually with you. What I was going to say is I don't think there's much usually that's sexually appropriate when it comes to Kennedys. So in this sense, Jack is kind of like on brand.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Do you think he feels like a Kennedy? It's always like when they don't have the Kennedy name, when it has been soiled by the Lady Kennedy
Right.
leaving the clan and mixing genes with the
Right.
non-Kennedy. They're not as Kennedy-esque.
I think you're onto something. Because I don't understand otherwise I do have a theory that involves, it's my own theory, I'm not a doctor, some mental illness at work perhaps. But I don't understand otherwise the need to constantly be on Instagram 5 times a minute. Like he just is posting.
How old is he?
He's 32.
Okay, so I thought he was 23.
Well, you
because I'm like,
would, because
I'm like,
he's-
okay, well,
yeah.
23 in today's culture, a 23-year-old boy is like a 19 or 20-year-old girl,
Oh, sure.
young woman.
Sure.
And so that would be, it's like you're still in late adolescence at 32. You are not in late adolescence. Like you need to, unless you are a privileged, annoying nepo baby, you need to get a life.
You should have a job. You should have a 401k.
Yeah.
You should have a credit score. You should have the fundamental building blocks of adulthood.
Yes.
You should not have all day, every day, to rattle around what I hear is a very expensive apartment in front of your unmade bed, looking unshowered and unshaven, rattling whatever your unexpurgated thoughts are onto social media.
Yeah. He's got to screw loose. He really does. He's
it
one
run-
of those people who has clearly been indulged and probably undertreated for whatever else is going on. And I think it's fine. Like in this setting, I think it's encouraged to be armchair psychotherapists.
You do. I'm glad you think so because you have great insight into people. You do, and into behaviors. But I think there is something up. The other thing is like they're so intent on taking RFK Jr. down.
Yes.
I am no fan of RFK Jr.
I know. And people need to read your book and learn more about his psychopathy.
Thank you. In our estimation, again, but I do think there's something.
Not a stretch.
I do think that there is something
Blue cheese.
about Jack and his mother Caroline attempting to take him down. My theory is that Caroline, as the heir to quote unquote Camelot, thought political stardom was hers.
Yes.
Remember when she tried to get Hillary's Senate seat?
Yes.
And she gave a series of interviews to otherwise adoring outlets who could not help her patch a sentence together without likes and you-knows. She could
Almost
not.
like Kamala Harris,
Oh yeah, she was Kamala 1.0.
Yeah.
For sure.
who was trying for Camelot, and that was a failure as well.
That was a failure as well. And watching her, this whole thing with 60 Minutes sort of transpire, where they're being held to account for editing that is really great. But anyway, back to Jack Schlossberg.
No, but you're right, because I think that's really important, because I've always thought the dynamic within the family is very interesting. And so his side writes it off as, we're a big, loud Catholic family. We love each other utterly. We have disagreements. That may be the case. And, a lot of people can identify with that. If you have a lot of brothers and sisters and cousins and aunts and uncles, and you all get together and you're very close, of course you're going to fight. People can relate to that. But if you really love someone, would you call them a predator? And would you rat them out for their teenage cocaine use?
Oh my God, two things on this.
Which is what Caroline
this.
Kennedy did in her statement, trying to railroad RFK Jr. as if I never talk and I never say anything, but I'm going to say something now, so it's extra important. Since I never talk now, you have to listen. And Robert is a predator, and he put mice in a blender. And you take that out of context, like, wow, what a monster. And then you're like, oh, he was feeding another animal.
Right. She didn't say whether they were live or dead. Did he go get them at like the pet store, which is how you feed
Were they
other
frozen?
animals?
Yes.
Exactly. Was it in the frozen aisle? But I do wonder, like, okay, first of all, if you really believe he is a predator and a danger to women, then the time to come forward was years and years and years ago, as this family has ritualistically obliterated the girls and women who come into their path. Secondly, if you do really believe he's that much of a threat, you don't wait until the 11th hour. You start speaking up well before this guy gets into a position of power. I think a lot of jealousy is at work. I think the animus there is so strong. She was supposed to be the one. She got these ambassadorships for getting Barack Obama elected. She got the Kennedys behind Obama instead of Hillary. That was a huge deal. And obviously he took the measure of her and was like, I cannot even give her, like, what would be like the softest cabinet appointment?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Secretary of Commerce.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we're going to send her overseas.
Yeah.
Cut some ribbons. Okay.
But that's what happened. So now with her son, and, again, like, that's a weird relationship when you're like, Mom, we have to do an Instagram reel. Like, I have to video you, and this is really important. And then she's like,
it is a weird relationship. Again, he's 32.
Yeah.
Uncleave thyself.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and people always said that JFK Jr., God rest his soul in heaven with a baby Jesus.
But it was his own fault.
He had, but the things that you document in your book about him and his danger sinking, like, he wanted to die.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is a person with a death wish.
Oh, yeah.
This wasn't someone who was like, I want to push myself in the boundaries and I want to experience nature. No, this is someone who's like, oh, this is something where we could easily die and people would be sad about it and write poems about me. I want to go do that.
Yeah, and I'd love to take whoever I'm dating with me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's story after story, but he had a curious relationship with his mom.
100%.
And he was a late launcher as well, but he was still ambitious and impressive in his own way. And he really, God bless him, he really tried. He was a good trier. I don't get that from Jack Schlossberg.
I don't either. And I think the other thing about JFK Jr., even though he was sort of fundamentally very Kennedy-esque in his entitlement and his narcissism and his thrill-seeking, he presented as an adult.
Yes.
Right? He looked like a grown man who could, like, handle himself in the world. And Jack Schlossberg reads as sort of like a runt that kind of stopped maturing, prematurely. I don't know. It just, nothing reads right about him. If I were one of his parents, first of all, I wouldn't be, because I wouldn't produce a useless adult such as that.
No, you kick their out and be like,
get
that's
a job.
I'm cutting you off. You have to figure it out.
Get a job.
Yes.
No, I would be yanking him off social media, and I would have him, they are in Manhattan, I would have him in the finest psychotherapist's office post haste.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm sure there are many people who would love to treat them, and they would be very eager to present data to his family saying, your son has given himself brain damage by being on social media too much, well into his 4th decade. Don't go anywhere. More Kennedy Saves the World right after this.
Have you seen Grey Gardens?
No.
Oh my God, you got to see it. It's amazing. It was 1975. It's a documentary about Jackie O's aunt,
And
Big Edie Beale,
yes.
and her daughter, Little Edie Beale,
Oh.
who were living in squalor in East Hampton for decades. They had amazing personal style, okay? But like they're talking to each other and the walls are open and there are raccoons in the walls.
What?
And this is just like a normal day for them. I'm not exaggerating. Like you could not make this up. Anyway, if you watch Grey Gardens, you will see that thread in that family,
Yeah.
which is deep, I believe.
And is that like, I mean, it's got to be a manifestation of mental illness, of like OCD.
Whether it's OCD, the Beals were definitely hoarders.
Yeah.
They lived in the past. They live like again, that's part of the pathology of this family. I think they
Yes.
live in the past.
But I think pathology is a really important word. I mean, it's not necessarily these choices, because the choice to heal yourself and mature and move on is a difficult one.
Mm-hmm.
And it is in many ways like that's a Herculean task. Like you are tested when you're trying to overcome something that is baked deep inside of you. It is possible though. It is possible to be an adult when everything and everyone around you is screaming. Like, it's so much more fun to be Peter Pan.
Is it though? Like I wonder because
It's not satisfying, but like fun has diminishing returns in adulthood, as it's supposed to. Otherwise, we'd all be at Disney World with little ears on, the 365.
this is the thing I think. I think you're onto something because I think most of us get dopamine hits from like we like kill something at work or we are shopping, you know, but we don't get dopamine hits from social media if we're careful consumers and participants in it, right? I think this is the sole source for Jack Schlossberg of dopamine hits.
Yeah.
Is the likes in the comments. And it is extremely juvenile. It is not the real world. He is living in an echo chamber. And if this is, I mean, I think it's I think I've said this many times about like this dynasty dying, but this really is the death knell. Like he constantly talks about his grandfather, JFK, being his personal hero. For all of JFK's many failings, he got America to the moon
Yes.
first.
And he lowered taxes.
And he founded the Peace Corps. And Robert Kennedy was an agitator for civil rights long before it was fashionable, even among the Democrats. And he was the first to really bring attention to poverty in America, deep, deep poverty. This is the issuance of that genetic pool. This kid?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
where it all rests. That's what we have left.
Yeah.
Of
Lucky
Camelot.
us. Lucky us.
So what happens to this family if RFK is in fact confirmed? Is it the best thing to happen to them? Because is it like, you know, here's RFK 2, Electric Boogaloo, it's the sequel you didn't see coming? Or
Yeah.
is it like, oh, this is so painful, we're just going to bleed to death and give up?
They don't have any other talent on that bench. Like, I don't see it. I think that Bobby going MAGA, I mean, it's sort of like a metaphor for the Democratic Party itself, which is in just complete disarray and doesn't understand still how and why they lost.
Yeah. And I look at the Obama Presidential Center because they can't call it a library.
Oh, they
because-
can't?
No, because it's too big.
Okay,
Too big.
who's overcompensating for, as Obama said during the election last time, right?
Yeah.
Who's overcompensating?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that whole thing, like, he can't raise any money. You know, it's like no billionaires want to write him $100 million checks for this.
I love that, like, the likes of Jeff Bezos and that billionaire class are like slamming their wallets shut.
Yeah.
Because apparently he's so arrogant and impossible to deal with. Like, they've had it.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me everything.
I mean, that's just I read a little bit about it yesterday, like the headline, but it's like they have had it.
Yeah.
He is impossible to deal with, and they've given all they can, and they're done.
Yeah.
And so he should just go off and make whatever he's making at Netflix that nobody watches.
Yeah, but, well, they should team up with Meghan Markle.
Oh, please, I
To
know.
watch, like,
I know.
industrial
Did you happen
brought
to
to
see?
you by who gives a
Yeah, like did we talk about this? Did you happen to see Michelle Obama's most recent show for Netflix?
No.
Nobody has. It's called Later Daters.
What?
I know it sounds like I'm making it up, but I couldn't. I'm not this inventive.
Brought to you by Centrum Silver.
Right. Brought to you by the When They Go Low, We Go High cohort. It's about people later in life dating. It's a dating show produced under the Higher Ground shingle.
Yes, Higher Ground is the name of their production company. It's like, when they go low, we go high. It's like, do you? Yeah.
Do you?
Was it really taking the high ground when you skipped Jimmy Carter's funeral, who was so incredibly gracious always to the Obamas?
Who spent his post-presidency showing other former presidents how it should be done.
Yes.
Not lining your pockets, building homes for Habitat for Humanity, teaching kids at Sunday school, retiring from public life, and allowing the country to move on to a new generation of leadership. But no.
Yeah.
We're going to stay in Hawaii.
Yes. She's kind of busy. Like, she had stuff to do in Hawaii. But yeah, I think it's very interesting because I was looking at this going, why would anyone donate? That would be like buying one of Hunter Biden's paintings right now.
I know.
What does that get you?
Also, how long does it take to build this
scene
thing?
at Joe Biden's funeral?
Like, how long does it take to build this monument to himself?
Yes.
Forever?
That was supposed to be done in 2021, and now they're pushing it to next year, which I'm guessing at this point it's going to be 2028.
The astronauts will be home by then. The
They
ones
will.
that are stranded in space.
Yeah, Elon Musk is going to fly his little jetpack to the International Space Station and Sherpa them back home.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, the Obama stuff is just wild to me as well. And I kind of feel like the chickens have come home to roost for those two because they're such hypocrites and they had so much goodwill, especially in 2008. Even if you were on the other side of the aisle, like everybody recognized what a breakthrough moment that was.
Amen.
And now it's like we see them for what they are. They're greedy, they're selfish, they're narcissistic. The Obama who once said, I do think at a certain point you make enough money against the billionaire class is, what do you call that sport that he does with Richard Branson? Like paragliding or whatever,
yeah.
when they're tethered to a boat, yeah.
Yeah, they're he has shown himself to be more empty than people thought. And Michelle Obama was always resentful of the White House. She was she always felt like she was trapped inside and couldn't live her life. Well, she's free now. She's becoming. She's everything every woman ever wanted to be. Like, she had power, now she's free of it. And on the other side of power is money and access and privilege and whatever she wants. So what is she so mad about?
I know, what's the problem?
And who was she mad at? Was she mad at Kamala because she didn't want Kamala in the first place? Or is she mad at Trump for being Trump and being who he was and running on that and being the opposite of disingenuous?
The thing about the Carter funeral, there were two things that really annoyed me. One is this country, for all of Michelle Obama's grievances and the faces she's always making, we made her a very wealthy woman, very wealthy. So this is a transaction. Do your part. You are part of one of the most exclusive clubs on the planet. A former first lady married to a former president for how much longer? We don't know. But I also thought Obama was really getting the shiv into her when he made sure to be filmed and photographed laughing with Trump and being very, very chummy. That was like a shiv to her, I think.
You think that was intentional on his part?
Oh, yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any truth to the Jennifer Aniston rumor, and where did it come from?
The Jennifer Aniston rumor is too good to be true. I have a friend who works in this field in the sort of gossip world and is convinced it literally originated with like a supermarket tabloid, a bunch of which are in my bag right now, by the way.
Yeah.
But
or as we call it, research.
I do call it research.
Yes,
It's
exactly
tax
right.
write-off. But I think it's too good.
It came from somewhere, though. See, I think it came from the Obamas.
You do.
As a way to distract from the library.
You do.
Because I think it made him sexy and relevant. And even though people are like, how could he cheat on Michelle? But then they're like, ooh, but with Jennifer Aniston, that's a hot couple we never would have put together.
It's a hot couple we never would have put together. But then there are others who think that if Obama gets divorced, his next romance would not be with a woman. It would be with a man.
Oh.
Now, do you remember, this was several years ago.
R.I.P. Matthew Perry.
this really thick bio of Obama came out. And the New York Times reviewed it, and they were like, there's nothing to see here.
Yeah.
In that book were like details of Obama's fantasizing in college openly.
About men.
And his college professor in particular, who he was crushing so hard on.
Transference.
He was like, could I live openly as a gay man with this professor?
Yes.
And then he was writing to one of his girlfriends at the time, I make love to men in the imagination daily. Like these strange things. And like,
Isn't that sad that that all happened before Pornhub? Like he really would have to imagine it. He couldn't even find a good category.
Yeah, I mean, those were the days when you would have to like actually go to like a scuzzy physical store.
Yeah, and buy a ball-draining
something.
mag.
Yeah.
I love it. Oh, poor Barry, just tortured. But I do, maybe he should come out.
I mean, who knows? He does sort of fit the like he's very trim. He's kept himself in incredible shape. He looks like 10 years younger.
Maybe he should date a Republican.
Like who would you put him with?
Besant, however you say his name. Treasury Secretary, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, Mayor Pete Steichen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, Barack doesn't want to raise kids right now.
No, he does
doesn't
not.
mind
He's
lending
done.
a hand when his girls have babies, but he hopes that's a few years down the road.
I would think so. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've got to get all of those compounds baby proofed.
Yeah.
It's not easy to baby proof 4 compounds.
No, that's a lot of compounds. And, Jimmy Carter wasn't building his own compounds. He was building modest homes for the unhoused.
Poor people.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Here's to Jimmy Carter.
To Jimmy Carter. Terrible president. Seemingly good person.
Wonderful ex-presidency. We have to go. We love you terribly. This is Maureen Callahan and I, Kennedalia. This has been Kennedy Saves the World. I'm Kennedy. Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app. Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.